And this is the press event that they did. And so they invited, live press event. They treated this as a direct parallel to something that would happen in real life. Press showed up. They unveiled this new virtual beer. This is their head of design here, talking about the design of the beer can and what inspired them. Their Willem here, the guy in the suspenders, he is their brewmaster. And there's audio here, like they're talking, and it's the whole thing's a bit of a spoof on being in the metaverse and that you can't actually drink a virtual beer and there's no taste. So I mean, parts of the activities we set up in this land are having a beer tasting, and then you choose what the beer tastes like and rate it. Obviously, you didn't taste anything, and that's part of the joke. And Heineken was in on that, the whole time. So they're giving this, presentation here, and there are different sorts of effects and things that happen along the way. Just see if I find a couple other of those events. And he talks about, barley. We'll see the actual can here kind of come in. So the whole event and live part of here was staged to introduce this new beer, and then people were allowed to around the land. In between, they had a partnership with Thierry Henry, soccer player here, and he comes on and juggles a can in a little hologram ball here. And he keeps doing that between the events here. And then just a little bit around the space, because there were activities planned, and that was the downstairs. There was a partnership with an artist and different activities you could do to learn about the beer in this land. This is what the bar looked like, a totally different idea of a bar. The photo booth, even, having some fun and just kind of like jokey, like taking a screen grab, if you will, of the space, but setting up those moments. We set up this idea of it's a virtual beer, and the virtual beer can be sent all over the metaverse. And so we have hologram arms coming back from the beach and back from outer space in a cyber city, giving out virtual cheers, connecting people. We did a bunch of motion capture and wiring people up. This part was not motion capture, but we designed all the characters, the whole space, everything in here. And so we'll kind of work backwards a little bit here. That was the space, and once again, from motion capture to just plugging characters into Mixamo and things like that. We had to bring everyone to life. But designing with a big corporate client is its own thing. And we've been innovating and doing virtual spaces for a long time. So we work with them to define a language of the space, and worked very closely with their Heineken's head of design and what kind of spaces and events they were throwing, and how can we make parallels in the land, and what a virtual brewery even meant. And this was actually the fifth design of the building before everyone felt comfortable. And there's a little ticker sign on the outside, and we thought ahead about the signage here is dynamic, and we can control that and update this. So we can throw different events and change that signage inside, stream a different video to the back of the screen, throw a different avatar or 3D NPC in front of the stage, and host these live events that are only up for a few hours at a time. All of this was sketched before anything was designed. And you can see, if we flip back and look at the videos and everything, this is all pretty close. This idea of coming in and being, if there's a person waiting here that describes the land and where you can go and things to do, the horizontal vats, you can play with this can in the middle of a virtual can. We talked and broke down all of these activities, and even mapped those out, like the ideal user journey through this, and how we wanted people to experience the land, and how the event would unfold, where the POAP machine would be, And separating even spaces, like making the upstairs a social centric kind of space where, once again, Heineken can throw all different types of events, and they plan to. We helped make the POEP token, once again, dancers, how the stage would be viewed, and even that stage area, knowing, and hats off to Patrick and team, and all of you who helped answer so many of our questions. I can't thank you guys enough. Getting understanding how realms work, understanding the caps of people in the space and how many live avatars you'll see at the same time. We helped design the space around some of that, and knowing, like, seeing 100 avatars at the same time, and making this press event room support that, so it feels full at the same time, without wasting space. Once again, I talked a little bit about the beer tasting and these little events along the way, just to have some fun. And all of these things, I think what's interesting is this is actually the social media footage. So while we're building all of this, we're also pumping out assets for social media. They've got influencers coming in and running around the land and learning about it, and influencers were invited to the event. I think it's in this deck, but we hid an Easter egg in the land and somebody found it, and that was kind of fun to see that happen live. But once again, we planned all the activities, and every character had a design, and we needed to get that approved with Heineken and work through some different approaches, get their approval. This was the artist, and once again, once we have a way forward, getting references, modeling everybody, getting that approval before starting to animate. And if we step back, this is where it started. And we tracked our process in Miro, collaborative whiteboarding. And we invited the client in, like, just for context, we were one agency working with Heineken. There were, I think, 5 other, I would say, key agencies involved in the launch, from the live press event agency to the social agency to the agency that managed the art talent to the agency doing the media campaign itself, and then the brand campaign. So it brought a lot of people together. We needed all of them to understand, here's our timeline, here's what we're doing. Most of these people knew nothing about Decentraland or virtual or NFT, crypto, like, you name it. And we needed to explain to them, there's so many things you guys can do with this land. Do you understand, these are the hooks you can build into your campaign, and how we can have some fun pre and post, because this virtual beer will turn into a real beer. And we started off with education. This is Decentraland. This is what it looks like. This is the size land you're purchasing, and how much it costs. We had to walk the client through all of this stuff. Nobody got anything. And getting them from a creative campaign kind of lens, the agency partner coming at it with that lens, like, okay, well, what's that mean? Like, you want to make that asset and pay off this joke. Can we turn that into some interactive game, like something people can actually do in this land, and then capture the content that you need out of that? Walking clients through what we can and can't do, what Decentraland can and can't do. There's no mobile experience. All of those sorts of things, once again, important for clients to understand. This was our kickoff with them. There was a brainstorm. I mentioned different groups had different things they were interested in. So obviously Heineken's more interested in what this brewery is and what does it do. The actual press event was its own whole thing. So there was a group focused fully on that. And then the social team and media creation also. Whole team, we all broke out, brought together ideas, brought those back together in a design canvas. And that led into, if that was our research and discovery phase, now we're into our concept phase. great. We kind of have this idea of what we're trying to accomplish now. Here's some inspiration for our land. And we broke it up into our inspiration. And then this is actually a board directly like for the head of design at Heineken. So he could go in and he did, plop all this stuff in throughout the project and help inform and guide us. And this is where we started. This was the first building design. It's not, I think, something we would have gone to naturally, but we were told explicitly from like the client, we want a 6-pack. It'd be hilarious. So we did that. They looked at this and were like, yeah, we don't want that at all. And that starts, the cycle of working into a final design, which, we have a design narrative and what are we trying to achieve, nods to what exists, and eventually worked our way into the design. And once again, that's the design for everything. Every character, all the interactions, multiple states, as they did or didn't like different aspects of things as we ideated, slowly refined concepts into the space it turned into. And so that's just a bit, stepping back on process and how when lands and things like this and a design comes together, it's not an accident. It's all planned and orchestrated. And this is just the beginning of what we've been able to do with Heineken. I know we've got a few other projects already teed up. I think what's most interesting about this is as soon as this, or even before it went live, regions all over the world for Heineken started to reach out and ask about how can we throw an event in this land? How can we take over that stage? And that's one of the first things we're doing. Next week, there will be a live avatar DJ streaming into this screen over a couple days next week. We're also producing another music video in there for them. And once again, just regions reaching out. Hey, I'd love to throw like our company event in France there, or we've got this talent or band that wants to put on a show. Great. That's why we made this screen in the background dynamic so we can stream different things in and set up this space exactly for that. So it'll be a really interesting year to see and help like this brand, like unpack what all can be done in virtual spaces and live events. And that's really about it. Happy to open it up to questions or flip back to anything.
That's great. This is amazing. Like I didn't get to see a lot of this stuff too. You really went into a lot of depth on like how to set it all up. How long did the storyboarding process take?
We did the whole project was only 2.5 months. So the storyboarding phase it ran like a month, but there were obviously a lot of pieces to that, breaking it down by attacking, all right, let's attack the press event. Now let's do the bar. Now let's do working with the artist. So we had a timeline to work on. And then that kind of staggered. The first thing we wanted to hit was the space itself so that somebody starts to 3D model that while concept artist moves on to the next task. And then that creates a bit of a waterfall kind of effect there where concept design goes into 3D, that gets approved, turns into animation, that gets approved, goes in the land and gets programmed, added dev to it.
It was also that the first couple weeks, we thought this was going to be done in Sandbox, which it's so good that we did decide to go to Decentraland in the end because of they would never have been able to pull this off in Sandbox. Any sort of what was accomplished here would never have been able to be done.
That's true. That's very cool. some of the questions too, like the iteration between the 3D modelers and the code team. I mean, I participated on the code side, but I didn't do a lot of that interaction. But the process itself, like, I know that, let me rephrase the question. 3D modelers that come from a different world than the metaverse, they often have some learning curves related to like making things for Decentraland. It has a different way of rendering and stuff. Was that transition for them easy, or is it like more difficult?
So it's important, like that's a good distinction. Like 3D people come in two main types: the people who do effects and studio kind of work and commercials and movies, and then there's real-time web, and it's its own beast. You need highly optimized models, you need all of your textures highly optimized, shared sets wherever possible, and it's definitely a blend of a little art and science and a little bit of creative and tech working closely together. And there are absolutely tricks along the way, you know, that you should have a strong real-time 3D lead on a project so that understands that. You know, you can have guys modeling, you can have guys texturing, but then there's going to be one or two people that know the tricks of really optimizing and getting the most out of Decentraland or whatever platform you're on.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's exciting. This is it's really like a standout build, I think, against like a lot of the ones that have been released recently. It does do a lot of really fun stuff in there too. Were there any specific pain points that anybody that's watching this can glean from it, that like maybe they like the don'ts before we get to the do's, like things like lessons to learn early?
Yeah, I mean, for us, one of the things that hurt a lot was we didn't get our land until a week before the event. So we had built everything oriented one way, then we get the land and they're like, oh, we need to rotate 300 or 400 pieces now, 90 degrees. And that took, I think, about 48 hours in, you know, a week. You didn't really have that kind of time. Had we had that land up front, we would have obviously like built to that. So the sooner, obviously, you know what you're building on and around helps a ton, right? Like we needed, we had a 3x15 footprint for this, which is pretty sizable. But once again, we didn't know how it would be oriented, how much land around it, or anything like that. So that's, yeah, we weren't able to curate, you know, as much land and things, but we'll get to that in the future.
That's really cool. If anyone has any other questions, like feel free to type it out in the chat. If you have any, I know that there's got to be a couple. There's also people watching, I think, on Twitch and maybe YouTube as well. For those that are in the Zoom, unless someone is able to relay the questions from the other platforms. We got a question from Ed. How are people sharing the experience?
So they had influencers come in to this live event, and it was a mix of press and then influencers running around and streaming streaming the event out to Twitch and to YouTube. And once again, that was fun to watch that like happen organically and live, and to see people actually get excited about finding things. I mentioned Easter egg that we hid, and there were like, actually it's back in one of our horizontal tanks here, and there were like 40 people in that tank having a little party, which was hilarious, you know. And they people were watching his stream and then figured out how to jump across the tanks and get in there. So I think between that kind of sharing, you know, and building up like from the press event itself and that organic growth, that drove plenty of like eyeballs to it. And honestly, that was one of the agency's responsibilities. Like that's what they're good at. They're supposed to get the influencers there and set up the press and get everyone, they had 400 press lined up to show up, and I don't know how many influencers. But that's also part of working in these big projects, is having that kind of coordination and scale. Those articles went live within minutes of the event launching.
I know that one thing I constantly am relearning over and over is allowing the users to just run around like crazy. Removing certain colliders, letting people jump onto stuff. They're like cats. I always bring this up, but they just like to jump on stuff. They like to take pictures from weird and interesting areas. So like making a platform somewhere up top where they can get to and have like a good view to take a picture to put on Twitter or something is actually what they enjoy it. Until we can start to get more interactive things into this scene, then like that'll have to do, I think, for now. The question about how do they share the experience is also, I guess, maybe hinted or towards the like there's a share booth, right? There was the
photo share booth. Like there are activities that encourage sharing.
There was a number of other features too that kind of fell off just due to time, I think, or other reasons that maybe rolled in as time progresses. Just from experience, a lot of these builds, there's the land. Getting the land is obviously been addressed. It's like hard to do, and the first build is the hardest because you're setting everything up. But then every iteration now is going to be just entirely focused on the experience itself, and enhancing those types of things and the user feedback and the iteration over like what would be more fun and what would bring people back and what would keep people ideally hanging out and doing weird stuff. So just if you guys are building your own scenes and stuff, just try to keep in mind the tendencies of Decentraland users. They love jumping, they love platforming, they love those types of things. And until we can make games a little bit easier to build, that could be a high priority, I think, to have some interactions.
I mean, that's one thing we talked about. I think it was 3 a.m. at the night before the launch, and we were just sitting there laughing, being like, who knows what's gonna happen and what people are gonna do, because you can't script for any of it. There could be a collider that you have no idea about, but someone's gonna find it. And it's just kind of fun to watch unfold.
Yeah, and to Patrick's point, we took down some colliders to make sure people could jump off of high platforms and not feel trapped, and could just have fun hopping around the space. And then once again, while hopping around, all of a sudden you accidentally and purposefully slip through the top of one of those tanks, and there is a little like mini glowing can in there, and it says Easter egg. It's supposed to be a joke. So once again, it was fun for people to find that and start going there and having these little secret parties. You don't see the people in there from the outside.
And also, I can speak a little bit to the stage, the part that you're watching right now, while it's on and it's animating. This was actually a lot more difficult to achieve. I primarily worked on this piece, which was the orchestration of the video playing, the avatars playing an animation at a time sequence, and then having a slideshow, and all of these things had to be set to a time. So when the user walks in and they're there for the live event and it starts, we wanted to make sure that everybody's experience was exactly the same. It's actually a requirement, which meant that everybody needed to get a WebSocket notification that, hey, it just started. There was a countdown clock that appeared, and then from there, everything was just going by a clock and turning off this thing, turning on this thing. And some of those libraries, things that I had to build to help make that like a less painful process, I will be open sourcing it and releasing to the community. Hopefully it will help out people to do similar things in the future. I do know that it was a chore, quite a bit. I must have watched this presentation probably about 1,000 times, if not more. And there are certain things with the sequencing that I think we can make more interesting events in the future if we just kind of maybe an open source library that people can help contribute to would be really cool too. Maybe I'll make it a separate one. That's I know Shoes, you worked on this a lot. Was there any specific part that was exceptionally challenging that you want to share with everybody about, like maybe there's an easier way you found over time?
I mean, it's always tough as a first project because I was real rusty on TypeScript and learning what Decentraland's limitations were. Anytime you get into a new software, it's tough. I think the land rotation hurt us. There was a Git merge that we had an issue with that probably set us back half a day.
Terrible.
That was rough. But no, it's a lot of fun seeing how it grows. It's just always stressful your first time.
You did a lot of work with the dialogue of all of these individual avatars. It seemed like, was it straightforward? Was it difficult? I mean, you have quite a lot of characters saying a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty relatively easy to do using the NPC utils. There's a couple bugs that I found, which if I get time, I can look into more. But we found solutions around them. But I mean, it's a great utility. I think it's things like these that help grow the community quicker. I mean, it's kind of like Unity wouldn't be what Unity is. Take it or leave it how you feel without the asset store. So building more of these libraries that people have access to will just make it easier. Because there are people that have amazing ideas out there. It's just tough because right now to get that amazing idea, you have to know a good bit of coding. But I think there's tools coming on the way, I've heard, to help with that. So
yeah, absolutely. Nico here. And yeah, if there's time, I'd like to maybe later show what's coming up in that front. So we will be making the creation of that kind of library a lot easier in the very near future. I might be able to even showcase something.
Oh yes, that's a perfect segue. Thank you, Nico.
Okay. So basically, yeah, we have a set of utils libraries that are public, but like we've always wanted this to be something that grows organically out of the community. We want to have tons and tons of libraries of different people who ran into different problems that are probably common problems that everyone runs into. But yeah, like creating these libraries isn't entirely easy. Like I know that even like I myself had I really needed the help of better developers to set up the whole build process and all of the automated things that happen with this library. And now we have that encapsulated into like a default template project that you can just do DCL init and select a library as a kind of project, and you got all of that sorted out already. So hopefully we can show that off in a while.
All right, Nico, you're going to show something? If not, I just wanted to kind of close off the segment with Zach and Shoes.
Oh, I mean, I thought there was still more to do with with the Heineken scene. I don't want to hijack the meeting to this.
Yeah, that's yeah. So, if there are any more other questions, I know that there was one related to metrics. I don't believe that we really gathered a lot of meaningful metrics this round. Most of the metrics that I know of were coming from I guess, how many people were on the scene connected to the WebSocket, which is only live. It doesn't like save that data long term. So it wasn't a really good metric for how many people over time. But we did also collect the POAPs, which are a pretty decent indicator. However, there are certain POAP bots that exist where people just kind of don't even have to go to the property. I don't know why. They just kind of collect them through some bot. I don't know the purpose of people doing that, but they do that. Some of those issues have been resolved. There's now a Chapka for when you go to the POAP machine that is a lot more safe, I think, for that. And also, I've been talking to a company recently called WeMeta, who just recently had a grant on the Decentraland DAO for gathering these types of metrics and generating pretty useful charts for people about how many users over a certain event, when they joined, when they left. Not a lot of creepy stuff. Actually, it's useful information that I don't think anyone would have any issues with. Just like how long were people there when you're hosting an event like this and you want to see how many people over time. I mean, there's really no other way to probably do something like that. And I think that they're creating a library very, very soon that you'll just be able to import into your project and then be able to find the information out later. So we'll likely try to incorporate that into future builds ourselves. And I know that they're working really hard at making like nice charts and things and stuff like that. So I'll post the name for the I think it's just called WeMeta. You can do a search for them if you'd like. Are there any other questions for the Heineken building team that
Did you want me to just show the studio? Like I have the minute-long clip of the studio working.
I would love to show that. Yeah, your hard work on that definitely needs to be shown. It's amazing.
So this was just a work in progress, or is a work in progress, but it was also in thoughts with like Heineken, how can we get like cooler shots that then can be streamed out? Because right now we're limited to the cameras attached to the players.
Are you sharing your screen before you continue? Just want to make sure.
No, should I be sharing it?
Yeah.
I know I've disabled.
Okay.
You have to make you host.
Oh, that's right.
So yeah, so that's where this came about, was just trying to get cooler shot angles. There are some bugs in it. Right now it is a very manual process to get something like this set up. But once you do have it set up, it is very easy to replicate, I guess I should say. I'll just let the video play. Are you able to see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Can you hear it?
You should raise the volume on it. Might not be able to hear it, but you should definitely talk through it.
Okay, so I mean, what I have set up here is that you can control any camera angle that you set up in Decentraland beforehand. And it's kind of a middleware with Unity on when it's rendered through Decentraland, but all this is live. So if you had people walking around and there are more people in the scene, you would be able to see them all. And I'm able to, or you're able with this software to control the different camera angles. I stress tested it up to, I think 15 different cameras I had in the bottom section here. But then also you can interject your own stuff and kind of take over the post-processing, which is kind of fun. So the main idea with this would be, if you're having a live event, like, why not shoot it like a director? And you're like, all right, go to camera 2, go to camera 3, and get some, cool, more interesting angles and, sweeps and pans and whatever you want to do.
I love this. This is the coolest thing I've seen in a while. It's very, very cool. Even streaming that to YouTube it adds a lot more production value. you can even stream it to a screen inside of Decentraland. But I think we tried that actually at one point, didn't we? It's very cool.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. So where do you see this specific project going in like the future? Like,
Try to flush it out more. I don't know. I think it's just more creating tools and talking to the creatives that would use this instead of me just taking stabs like, hey, is that effect cool? I don't know. But getting some ideas on, how to refine it, and then, trying to stream it out to certain places. Like if you had a live event that what you wanted to live stream from Decentraland actually into a live event, why be stuck with, one or two cameras that are attached to the player and them walk around when, you can set it up. And I think that where it needs to go is into creatives' hands and them really finding the value of it. This is just making a tool to help with that.
One thing too, it's like Mishimama. Am I pronouncing that right? Like there can be a whole other series of people like just making short films and things through this process too, probably. Like people love doing that. I mean, it's basically what is the name of it? What is that Half-Life 2 game? The Gary's mod is basically revolves around. That's really interesting, and you have a lot of control in there because you're basically have like another Unity renderer instance, right? So you can do some pretty intense things that you can't probably do in Decentraland as it is, as it stands, like as you were just showing, like adjusting the contrast. Yeah, that cool fisheye lens. It'd be really cool to see what other types of effects that we could just like leverage and pull in and do there. Like you can make like a sitcom talk show.
Yeah, that's what we had talked about that before. If we build like 5 sets and then have the cameras like, all right, camera 2 always does this. Like, all right, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, I love it. It opens up a lot of possibilities for some really engaging stuff. That's really cool. You did a great job on that, and I know from the chat everybody agrees. That's very, very cool. So maybe in the future we can revisit this in another session and just let everybody brainstorm. If maybe do something specific. Maybe even next week if you're around. Everybody invite people that you think might find it interesting, and maybe we go to more depth and maybe put together somewhat of a roadmap or whatever you think would be useful for the project. Because I definitely know that it does have a future in Decentraland for sure. That thing is fantastic.
Thanks.
Very, very cool. Do you mind playing the video just one more time and then allowing anybody that is that has other questions, you can ask. So you can ask questions to the shoes about the studio and or any remaining questions for the Heineken build that might still be unanswered. And then after this, we'll go to Nico, who will be explaining some of the cool library features that are coming up. Okay, 15 separate individual cameras. That works fairly well on the machine that you have. You have a pretty, I guess, intense computer to be able to handle that, I assume. Shoes. You might be muted.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry. Actually, it is not that beefy of a computer, and I was really surprised how well it ran. I mean, not beefy into the sense of the NVIDIA card doesn't have 4 digits. So anything, I was really surprised how able it was to handle that many cameras and to preview that many cameras. But yeah, it handled it surprisingly well.
That's amazing. And so this is essentially the Decentraland desktop level of performance, right? So this is actually not in the web browser. It's using the full Unity. Like this has full GPU and everything too. So you can probably go crazy with that. That's really, really, really cool.
Yeah, what I want to look at now is because there are a little bit of quirks in this that we have found workarounds on, but it's not as seamless as I'd like it to be, is to look at the new desktop app and how that's, you know, compiled and how, the source on that. Because if I can maybe interject the middleware at that point, things might be a little bit smoother than the Unity renderer right now.
How is it when you're placing these cameras? It seems like you have predetermined pans. Like when you went to Cam 2, it actually like did you know, they actually all are doing it. How did you set those up? You did those within Unity? Were you able to save it as like a setting, or did you have to do that every time you loaded it up? Like my question.
No, I created them all as settings. I mean, they're all kind of camera prefabs that I'm able to put around and then adjust them how I want them.
And that uses Cinemachine?
This is using Cinema Machine, but I don't really know if I need Cinema Machine because I did use Cinema Machine in the first iteration and it's still buried in this, but I don't know if I really like the swooping from camera to camera, like the automatic interpolation that it does, which is fantastic for certain things. But this, I felt like I was turning all that interpolation off and doing more hard cuts to animations that I produced. You know, so at that point in time, I was like, what am I really using Cinemachine for? Now, if I wanted to be like, hey, camera 1, then camera 2, camera 3, like we could set it up that, you know, as a producer, if you really wanted to, you hit play at the beginning and then it just runs through the Cinemachine timeline and does all of it. I mean, that, you know, override button or something, and then it can fire off what cameras and have, you know, from the left, from the right, up, down, all at specific times. Like, yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if there's a way to generate like the 3D curves in code in the property and name them in a specific way that this GCL Studio would just notice and grab and then leverage, right? Like it could just, you know, it's basically just animating a camera across a spline and setting a focus. And maybe there's some features and things like that could be on the roadmap so that, you know, if you're building out your property, you could maybe play with these types of camera control, or at least like put them in a certain way. Like, you know, how underscore collider is interpreted by the renderer in a certain way. Like maybe there's underscore camera for certain things. I don't know. There may be some potential there.
It's just an animation keyframe situation, so.
No, that's true. Hey, Nico, do you have any thoughts or suggestions on this?
I'm mind blown. I mean, it's really, really, really good. I believe that, yeah, probably there is some, you know, some things that could be taken advantage from the native client. Surely there's things, you know, with the rendering and such that, you know, might be more, you know, compatible with that environment for rendering things. But I don't know, like the, you know, the under the hood of all that well to really say. But I mean,
Yeah,
if this can be productized and shared in some way, I'm sure like pretty much anyone doing events would love to get their hands on something like that.
that's like, Nico, one of the issues that I was talking about looking at more of the desktop app is because I'm sure videos play in the desktop app as opposed to me having to write, you know, using a different video player than, you know, what Unity renderer offers. And I assume the desktop, you can see video. So that's where I feel like if I need to look at how that was made, but.
Actually, I believe that right now there's an issue with videos running in the Unity player. I believe that a lot of people who had crashes during the Fashion Week had them because the video player is not entirely supported in desktop, and there's I don't know what fix is going to be done for that, but probably it might also be relevant for this.
Yeah,
but I don't know the details.
I can talk to them because I do have a fix it's just a very manual process. And maybe they're probably a lot smarter and can be like, oh, well, I like his idea and we can do it good. Kind of deal.
Sure. By all means, share that. They might have, they might find it useful. Sure.
Cool.
It's very. Thank you guys very much for everything. I mean, it's a remarkable build, and I love the studio product. It looks amazing. We'd love to see more of that in the future. And obviously we're gonna transition right now to Nico. We're gonna talk about, like, I guess, like the next steps of the SDK in terms of library. All right,
Yeah. Well, so we are planning a release of the SDK for probably tomorrow or maybe the day after. So this will be coming quite soon. And this will include a couple of new features, but probably the most interesting thing that I want to communicate is this ability to create libraries. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And well, we have this documentation page which is still unpublished, but you can get a gist of what this will look like. Basically, this details the steps you need to go through to create a library. As I mentioned before, like, creating a library today is quite tough. So like the whole process of setting up the build, it's not an easy feat. Like, if you look at any of the existing libraries in the Awesome repository, you'll see that there's a number of like different files there that are probably not that intuitive to set up. So what we included in the next SDK CLI version really is the ability that when you do DCL init in a new project, you will now be prompted to select what kind of project you want to select when you create, and you'll see that this last option here, library, is brand new. And once you do that, just like when you create a scene, this installs a whole lot of different dependencies and like default files. You will also get something similar for what is necessary for a library. So here I'm navigating a huge folder that I have that I call horrible tests. As you can see, there's a whole lot of them. But this is the library that I just created through this command in the console. And as you can see, there's like a bunch of files that are already there, and you don't have to worry about setting it up. There's a whole roll-up build, which to me like is complete gibberish. There's like a default README that even like has like a bit of a template to build documentation for your library. This is how you install it. This is how you use all different functionalities. And it has some basic code for a default component or whatever, which you can of course expand and modify however you want. So the beauty of this is that you can easily publish this through npm. So if you follow the instructions here that we have in the docs, all you really have to do is you need to publish the library as a GitHub repository, as a public GitHub repository, and so that then npm can fetch data from there. And then in the npm.js page, you got to create an account and set up a token for your project, and then you just have to put that token somewhere inside the GitHub repository of your library. And that's kind of it. Like, once you have that set up, every time you push to master in your library, that will just generate a new version. And whenever people do npm install in their scenes, they can get the latest version from your library. So yeah, that's really all it takes. And through that, like, the idea is to encourage more people to create more and more libraries, kind of like the utils we already have, or like what Batmax is making, which is also pretty nice.
Very, very cool. This is a godsend. The way that to do it now is really tedious. That roll up that we just saw, that was gibberish. It is just gibberish. It's really difficult to maintain that. There are a lot of people that want to build out these libraries, like that curved screen thing that I showed before we actually started recording. Plan on making that a library, as well as like a lot of utility functions and things. And I think it's going to allow us to share code a lot easier. It's great. And we would also be able to import or have our own images and models, I think, along with that type of thing as well.
That would be a bit trickier. Me personally, I did some experiments, and at least like out of the box, I couldn't share images and models in the library. I've been told that there are probably workarounds and ways you can get around that. But like even if you do that, like everything that comes with the library is by default in Node modules folder, which then doesn't get uploaded to the scene when you do deploy. So you need to still get your users of the library to either move the files manually, or some script needs to move them automatically in some way. That part may not be as straightforward. When it comes to images, at least, what you can do, which is what we've done with the UI library, is you can always upload the images to some external server, and then you're calling the images by URL from that server. That does work. But it would probably be nicer if you could pack the images with the library itself.
One suggestion might be that if we maybe added like a dot file to a directory or something like, I don't know, .dcl include or something into those. I don't know if it doesn't go through the node modules, maybe, but like some way for it to indicate like you should be looking and grabbing these files and throwing them in or something. Maybe, I don't know. There's some things probably. But yeah, doing the external image, it is useful to do that. If you're, by the way, if you're going to plan on doing that, I have done something similar. Like I hosted it on GitHub Pages. It's like an easy way of just getting assets up there. It's just a simple page that you just throw up there. It's on a CDN, so you don't have to worry about if people are gathering it from different parts of the world and the time, because it'll do it automatically. You just kind of just handle it that way. It won't work for models, however. So that has to be kind of done differently, I guess. So Nico, in the future, would we be able to see like another page in like, let's say like a year or less, maybe on the Decentraland site that would take us to libraries and maybe see something like a Unity asset store, for instance, for these types of libraries?
Absolutely. We've thought about that too. Whenever we have the Decentraland editor, will also be great to have like some kind of a browser within the editor or something. We definitely should have some kind of an asset store. We even thought at some point about tokenizing libraries. Like that is definitely all possible. We need to think about what makes sense, and what priority we can give these things, but it's definitely something we could tackle. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's excellent.
Like for the time being, I guess, like short term, the awesome repository where we have all of these example scenes and all of the existing utils library, that's open source, and that is open to pull requests. So, I mean, it would be great if, people who create libraries out there in the community also, just do a PR to the awesome repository and, add their own libraries to that list.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I'm going to be actually using this or trying to build with it this upcoming week, and maybe as early as next week, I'll have an updated DCL Connect utility library for everybody to play with. And I'll be hopefully using this. I definitely will not. I won't release it until I use this. By the way, but you guys can expect to see in that library a lot of stuff. I'm actually just going to try to list through some of it so you guys can see what they are. There will be a lot of a GUI animation system will be there. I have some cool functions for animations just in general that I think that are really, really useful for people to efficiently just, if you want something to happen every frame, right now you have to build a very complicated, maybe not complicated, but iSystem. But I found a way that maybe that's not necessary all the time. Like you'd be able to just call one function and have it run for a little bit and then turn it on and off as you see fit. And then also like an animation queue system, which is really nice. The UV maps are a challenge for a lot of people. When you attach an image to a plane or a video, they're actually different from each other when you're using a regular image texture or a video texture. So there's like a kind of a function that you'll be able to call just to easily just not even worry about that. As well as we do a lot of cropping of videos sometimes. I don't know if you guys have seen the Dead Fellas location, but we've done multi-screen. We actually, it was very popular also during the music festival, where it was one video and then slicing out individual little chunks, like cropping them out and putting each on a different plane. That's been that's a challenging math problem a lot of the time, and it's been simplified now. So you could just put in the X, Y, Z, like basically the crop settings for the video, and it'll handle it for you, as well as curved screens will be in, and other thing, a lot of utilities just in general. Maybe one day we'll see them actually kind of find a way into the official SDK or the ECS util, as well as the other stuff that you normally see in the DCL Connect, stuff like that, that weird split flap thing, that ticker thing that happens. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, it's like 4 months of utility stuff that I've been putting together and making open source in just a little bit of time. So hopefully I'll demo or show that off next week for everybody. Simple screens and things like that as well. So, okay. Thank you very much, Nico. If there's any other questions related to the library that anyone wants to.
I got a question for Nico. It's not about the library.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
So, sorry. These emotes, custom emotes, is that
Yeah.
that's gonna be a thing, and how soon of a thing, and how would you make that in Blender, like on the avatar, and people are able to use that emote?
Yes, that is going to be a thing. Not just yet, because the whole submission process and the whole curation process for emotes needs to be set up, and that like might take a couple of months. Like also the builder tool needs to be like modified, and needs to support the ability to preview and set up all the properties of the emotes when you submit one, just like with wearables. But yeah, like I'm not directly involved in this, but I'm, I know the people who are, and I'm in constant conversation with them. And I think the plan is like, I don't know, 3 months from now, I might say. But I don't think there's a definitive date set up for when that's going to be a public thing to be able to submit. But yeah, when that happens, the idea is that people will be uploading like Blender files with the emotes as animations.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
That'll be really fun.
Yeah, definitely.
You could put that motion capture suit back on, shoes.
We got to figure that out still.
All right, I think that's about it. We might want to end it here. I think this is a good ending point. I don't see anybody. No one has messaged me about any current SDK problems that they have that we could walk through, and I think that'd be about it. So I guess thank you all for joining. Next week we're gonna have a more standard session. I think we might revisit the was a studio, the DCL studio, and maybe take some suggestions and maybe look at it for a little bit, and then we'll jump back into code and we'll get in there. And maybe if we're lucky, I'll have my library and I can show you guys how to download it and use it on your projects. So thank you all for joining. Please remind other people to join as well, and make a suggestion if this isn't the best time. We're kind of still playing with the time. So we'd like to see like 20 or 30 people every week would be, I think, a good number. But you guys got to get the word out